Hi there. Welcome to Module 1 of Entrepreneurship class. I wanted to take a minute to welcome everybody to the class and thought I would offer a little mini lecture to get us started this term. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at your text by now, and I thought in this particular lecture I would pull out a few of the most important items that I saw that we probably want to focus on, but definitely take a look at everything that's in the assigned chapters. Your book starts out by defining entrepreneurship from a couple of different perspectives, and I think that the simpler one is something that we think about. I think probably the first one is one that we would probably, if you asked any of us, that we would focus on more. So we'll probably look at either one. Either one works for me as we're talking about this as we go through. I wanted to take also an opportunity here to introduce you to the idea that your concepts of a new venture or any kind of entrepreneurial business or organization that you might want to start doesn't have to be totally profit-centered. It can also be something that will have an impact on the world around you. So this is a 2-minute video. It's a hot link, so take a minute and click on this link and take a look at this. It also gives you an idea of how to broaden your horizons and think about your possible concept for a business idea or proposal. Take a look at this as we start thinking about risk and entrepreneurship. I know some of you have already expressed a concern about the possibility of risk and how great that is in starting a new business, and that is not a totally unfounded concern. As you see that the majority of businesses in the United States are small businesses. One definition is any company that has 500 or fewer employees. But many of us think of a small business as having a handful of employees or 25 employees, that sort of thing. So you can see here from the diagram what percentage has different levels of involvement there. Also, in terms of concerns, it is critical that we go into our new ventures with our eyes open and that we prepare well, not only for launch, but also for the total implementation. And that's something that we're going to stress in this class because a lot happens not at launch with new businesses, but it's their ability to survive over time. And you can see here that it drastically drops each year based on the business acumen and the environmental conditions that a new young business is exposed to. So we want to take those things into consideration as well. Your book, this is a diagram I also took from your textbook, which shows that there are a lot of different aspects and inputs as we look at entrepreneurship. So we're going to actually take a look at and touch on the majority of these as we go through the course. Here is our simple definition of entrepreneurship, and we've kind of broken it down a little bit to some of the areas again that we'll be talking about. Initially, we are going to start out by talking about forming that opportunity idea, and then who our customer is, what our product or service might be, who's going to be our go-to team to start out with, and how do we finance or find resources for it and lead this new venture. Your textbook also has a great diagram here that shows the actual process of taking an idea from its idea creation all the way through to implementation and then actual growth. And you see that on the front end, the personal founder of this new venture or organization has huge impact. And as we move along the continuum of time, we begin to also see that other factors can have a lot to do with that. Fortunately, most of you are business majors, and you will have a heavy dose of management acumen underneath your belt so that when you get to the point where we move more from innovator to business manager, you will have that knowledge to help you along the way. Things that are important to start out as an entrepreneur are who you are. And one of the things that we're talking about in this first module online is the actual person, the entrepreneur, and what types of personal skills, attributes, talents that we think that particular individual should have or would be conducive to success. And here are a few. The first one, as you know, is a high internal locus of control. If you're not familiar with the term locus of control, please do look it up. It has a lot to do with whether or not you as an individual perceive that you have control over your decisions and your choices and somewhat your impact on those decisions, as opposed to somebody who believes that everything that happens to them, or most things that happen to them, happen because of luck or chance or somebody else maneuvering their environment. And to be a successful entrepreneur, it is really important to have a strong internal locus of control versus external, where you believe that you have no say in choices and that kind of thing. So you can see the others. The last one, again, is risk tolerance, and that is something that we're going to take a look at down the road too, is take a look at what our individual risk tolerances are. But we don't start a business or an organization in a vacuum, so we do have to take a look at environmental factors, and some of those are listed here. The reminder I have listed at the bottom, which is also second in your book, is that there is no one person that is best suited for entrepreneurship. They come from all different walks of life. So don't feel like there is one particular recipe that makes a great entrepreneur. And part of our first module discussion forums, we are discussing, I'm having you give us examples of entrepreneurs that you're familiar with so that we can begin to see that they are quite varied. And here's a second video that I would like to share with you. Many of you are probably familiar with Richard Branson. He's a British entrepreneur and quite wealthy. He dropped out of school. He has learning disabilities, and yet he's been highly successful and is touted as a very strong entrepreneur and a great manager of people. So again, this is a great way. He talks in this short video, it's about 4 minutes long, about how he got started and how he started actually in high school and how some of his ideas came about, his successes and his flops. So again, another perspective of who an entrepreneur is. And this is just another way of helping us get our head wrapped around who an entrepreneur is and think about how these words and terms fit into you and your personality, and see, it's sort of like trying entrepreneurship on like you would try on a pair of gloves and see how well it fits. So there are a few things that we need to do before we jump into a new venture. So the first is to take a look at our personal financial situation. Are we able to, do we have a source of income? Are we able to live with little or no salary for a while? Most, as we'll discuss when we get to the financing aspect, most contributors to your new business are going to want to know that you have skin in the game and that you are giving up something in terms of finance so that the well-being and the success of your new business is critical to your survival. And so they're going to expect that you take little or no salary initially. And then what will you owe other people? Where will your financing come from? Another, and again, we'll spend a little more time in a subsequent module looking at this aspect of a new business. And then who are your networks and resources? So who can you tap into, not just for money, but for ideas, expertise. So think about accountants and lawyers and managers and vendors and anyone that you know within the industry or the type of business that you're interested in. And then I give one of the main pieces of advice I give is to talk to entrepreneurs, talk to people, and get as much help and advice as you can. Be a sponge. Don't automatically think that you have all the answers. Your textbook talks about the Timmons model as a way of creating a successful new business and what that all entails. And this is just a diagram, but if we look at the explanation, we see that it starts with a business opportunity. And take a look at these questions, because these are questions that you're going to need to ask yourself. One of the main themes of this course is I'm going to ask you to come up with an idea for the business, for a new venture, either for profit or not for profit. And we are going to take that idea, and each of you is going to run with it throughout the term. And we're going to, every time we move into a new aspect of the textbook and of entrepreneurship, you're going to develop it for this new idea. And whether or not you actually launch it is totally up to you. That is not a requirement of the course at all. But we're going to start here with thinking about what ideas you have for opportunities. And then who will you surround yourself by for advice and assistance? And again, what industry are you in? Is there a need for this? And resources, which is what we've just been talking about. So touching just briefly on resources and startup capital, there are really two ways you can go. You can go into debt, or you can use equity. So hopefully most of you have had accounting and finance, but pretty much debt means that somebody is going to give you some help and financially, and you have to pay it back. And secondly, the equity is investors who are going to invest in that, but typically that means that they have some sort of return on their investment, like a piece of the ownership. So there are pluses and minuses to both, and we will take a more in-depth look at that as we get a little farther into it. Typically, when you start out, you don't have a lot of investors. Here's a more common path that starts out. Most small businesses are opened with personal savings and sweat equity. In other words, you work for free, while hopefully you have another source of support, and that is your contribution financially to the business. And then perhaps you might have an angel investment, or you might have some bootstrapping. You may have some crowdsourcing, some fund sourcing from some online possibilities that we'll take a look at, and perhaps family, that sort of thing. And then as your business grows and develops and you have a track record and you have some financial data and some success behind you, that's when more traditional methods will take a look at you, like banking and loans. And then if your business really takes off, it's possible that you could attract some venture capital and eventually do an IPO. So cash is king. Cash is king, and did I mention that cash is king? So I have been a small business owner, and I can tell you that the one thing that kept me up at night was concern about a positive cash flow. So there's a difference between profits and cash flow, and it's important that you understand that difference. So you can have a positive profit and have no money to pay your bills. So again, as we get farther into the financing area and into the accounting aspect of the day-to-day business, we'll take a little bit of a greater look at this. But make sure that you understand these terms. If not, go pull out your accounting books and do a quick brush up. It's important to know that you can meet your daily obligations as a small business person. So how do we know we have a successful company, or what are some of the ingredients? And they really are dependent on these things, these items here. So take another look at these, and notice we have both, frugal is in there. So one of the things I often hear from people who want to start a business is that they want to be their own boss, which is great, but they also don't want to have to do a lot of work. They want to have a lot of time to spend with family or traveling or whatever their hobby is. But I can tell you from experience and from knowing many other entrepreneurs, Pretty much you are going to work really, really hard, especially initially. So you want to take another look at that. And your idea for your company needs to be something that you are passionate about and that you can see yourself doing and working a lot of hours on. So as we wind up here, let's take a look at some of the questions that you might want to ask as you try to come up with your new idea for a possible business or nonprofit venture. So what is it that you're passionate about? And do you have experience in this field? If not, you probably want to get that. And that'll be probably on your list of your plan for moving forward. And then start talking to other people about it. See what they think about it. You know, I have had students who've kind of floated their idea out on Facebook to just get some feedback and see what others thought. And is your idea a real opportunity? Your book offers a checklist for that, and it really depends on what edition you have. The edition that I have happened to sitting here on my desk has it on page 105, but take a look for it in your textbook. And then who would your customer be? And think about target audiences. If you've had marketing, you understand the concept of a target market. And again, we'll move into that when we get into the marketing segment of building a new business. And thinking about not just do you have a great product or service, but is it valued by people out there, and who would that be? And would they be interested in purchasing it? And how much would they pay? So then we have to come up with a strategy, and that has a lot to do with pricing. That's one of the hardest decisions that you're going to make when you launch your product or service. And remember that gross margin and net profit margin are two different things, because, and again, if you're a little fuzzy on this aspect of accounting, you do want to kind of brush up a little bit, because this is important as you take a look at your expenses and your revenues. So look at the entire chain, supply chain and value chain, and find out, what your costs are really going to be. So besides your customer, your competition is very, very important. And that's another area of research that we're going to take a look at. There are a number of sources out there that we can use to gather that. We can also do a lot of field work. I did that. At one point, I opened a coffee cart, and I visited numerous coffee shops in the area. And I never drank so much coffee in my life. Oh my goodness. But I checked out their pricing and their service and their product, and got a really good idea of whether or not my location would be acceptable. So your new big idea won't be perfect, but the thing you really want to know is this a true opportunity? And that's what we're looking for. And then we'll take that opportunity and we'll look at these things and develop a strategy for launching. And in the very end of this course, each of you will have developed a business model, and we'll know where your revenue is coming from and what your costs and overhead are and how you're going to run that business. So we want to make sure that we're meeting our customers' needs and establishing some sort of sustainable competitive advantage, one that will last over time, and creating value for people for which they are willing to pay, and that the people around us truly matter. So the final step will be implementing this, and we'll have an entry strategy where basically this is your strategy to launch. And again, we won't necessarily do that, but you're welcome to, and that would be a wonderful finale. But most students don't actually get that far, because there's a lot to do before you get to the point of launch. So again, we will take a look at marketing down the road, and that's a tough thing for a new business because often there is a cost involved. So we'll throw out some great ideas for that as well. Lastly, do your research. So I've emphasized throughout this discussion that it's really important to be a sponge and to talk to people and ask questions. Everywhere you go, you need to take a look at that and do your research. Again, there are a lot of sites that tell us who lives in our areas. What is the demographic makeup? Is this a target market that can afford what you're trying to sell or offer? And is there even an interest in it? What are the trends? Are people moving in, people moving out? And if so, which group is moving in and which group is not moving in? Well, that concludes the lecture for our first module. I look forward to seeing you online. And as always, please don't hesitate to contact me either by email or phone. And my contact information is listed on the course Canvas page. Thanks again and have a great week.